welcome to showcase number 87, I believe. We have a sort of weird schedule today. It's not going to be a very usual showcase, and you'll probably notice immediately that I'm not exactly voicing this over. I'm actually talking in real time right now. You can see I can move my mouse around and move myself in game and everything. That's because I want to do something a little peculiar, and that peculiar thing is that we're going to be just going straight into a clip, or a quote-unquote clip. It's just me talking about the intro, but I wanted to do a very thorough demonstration, or I guess a very surface level demonstration really, of what crafting is, what you can expect from crafting, and maybe the process that you'll get to enjoy when the game actually comes out, either in beta or for a full launch. The reason for that being that I think I usually go through this stuff kind of piecemeal, you know? I display one thing or show off another thing and say maybe this bug is fixed, maybe this thing is in, but fundamentally you don't really get to see what that means, right? You don't understand if that means, oh, this is fixed, that means this works now, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You don't get to see it as a homogeneous system, you just see it as a little individual feature or something like that. So today we're going to be taking probably 10 minutes or so just to take a look and actually use a recipe, make a tome, and think about ore and what I want out of the ore. So without further ado, I'm going to just jump right into it, and then later on we're going to be going through some of the more specific details of how this works and, generally speaking, just how crafting works, I guess. That's going to be coming later, though. I'm going to be going through it again on a surface level first because I feel like people will be less confused that way. So first thing I want to do, if I want to make a weapon, is just mine as much ore as possible. I just want all of the ore so I have all of the options. It's very basic, very straightforward, but it's also very critical, and it's probably pretty easy to screw up. You might go looking for one specific ore and then end up without enough options to actually make a decision. One thing I will note for this showcase, I did disable resources being deleted upon a recipe being made or consumed. That's not a cheap thing. I can delete them fine. I just really don't like it sometimes. It's a little annoying having to mine again and again and again, so I hope you guys understand. But before we look at the ore itself, after we mined quite a bit of it, we're going to be taking a look at the recipe we're going to be using. So this recipe is modified. I don't know if you guys can tell, but from the previous showcase where I used alloys and gems in the recipe for these weapons, obviously now it's only ore, and it also doesn't seem to require a blacksmithing mastery, which is of course the case. It doesn't. It's just I made it for testing so I don't have to constantly buy that mastery over and over again every time I load up the game. And the stat line, I don't know if you guys remember from last showcase, it is the same. So it's 0.25 for reserves and then 0.5 for all of the affinities. That's the stat line we're going to be working with today. And that's the stat line we're going to be basing all of our assumptions off of. There is one thing I will note before I get any further into this, and that is there is a focus mechanic, and I'm going to go more in depth on it later, but all you have to know is that I'm going to have a 10% stat bonus to anything I create or any stat I produce because of the fact that I'm at full focus. Again, that's going to be something I'll go into later in more depth, but I just wanted you to know exactly why you'll see 0.55 instead of 0.5 on these. So anyway, that aside, we can start taking a look at some of this ore and checking it out. So the first we'll look at is gold ore. In the previous couple takes of this, there were some pretty bad rolls on gold ore, and you can see we got a pretty decent one this time. So ordinarily, gold isn't that fantastic. Obviously, it only gives around a 1% times bonus. But when you have good mutations here, like on Terra, you get a pretty decent chunk of change in return, right? And the whole idea here is that gold is just generally a good material to use. Everyone wants affinity for one reason or another, be it for their own damage or for defending against another person's damage. So if you put gold into a weapon, it's probably going to turn out fine. It's not a big deal if it doesn't, because you can always get more gold. It's not that big a deal. It's a mid-range, just valuable material. Stellarite is sort of that taken to the extreme. You can see that it has some insane bonuses. This is because we got some pretty crazy mutations here. I assume 2 of them hit Ignis, causing it to hit 1.6 times here. But that's beside the point. That'll be tweaked in the future. All I wanted to show off is that these are, generally speaking, pretty good at making your weapon better, right? So the better the ingredient, the better the weapon. That's as simple as it gets. We can take another look at some of these other things here. I think I'll end up using cobalt because I just want to show off reserves. This has a pretty good value as well. It's 25% extra on top of whatever it already is, so that's not too bad. Iron, coal, iron. This iron's really bad. I mean, the reserves is actually pretty good. It's kind of absurd actually, but Obviously, the other stats are pretty terrible. Whatever the case, we're going to be just using cobalt because I feel like that's a pretty middle of the line material, and you can see that its stat multipliers are as well. So if we go over here, you can see it pops out on the side here, and we can pick cobalt out of that list. And then again, I employ that you take a look at these baseline stats. Again, we have 0.25 for reserves and 0.5 for the rest. We're going to be seeing 0.55 for all of the affinities because we are at full focus, which is our fatigue meter basically. Because we aren't fatigued, we can make better items. So I'm going to try to hit craft, and it's not going to let me. That's just a forewarning. I have to be in range of an anvil, so I can go over here, and then it says I construct a destruction wave. Destruction wave. That's a fun word. But anyway, you can see obviously it didn't open the right inventory. That's just a kind of small thing. But anyway, I apologize if you can hear my cat. The book itself has, again, like I predicted, it has 0.55 for all of the affinities. It also has 0.34 for the reserves, and the reason for that is because it's 10%, like I said, because we're at full focus, added to reserves, and then it's also getting multiplied with cobalt, which has a 1.25 times multiplier. Kitty, you gotta be quiet. I apologize about that again. She loves to wrap herself around my feet, but whatever the case, this also has a CDR attached to it. And the reason for that is because there's an invisible tag applied, and it's not meant to be invisible. I just haven't added it to the bottom here. But I don't know if you guys remember, a long time ago we had a whole tag system implemented where you could have a fragile weapon or a agile weapon or whatever else. And this is one of those tags. So it's just adding 3% CDR because it has one of those tags. It's as simple as that. It's just randomly applied on every weapon when it's created. So if I were to create another one, it might have a different tag. It might have the same tag. Who knows? Anyway, that's, I think, most of it. You can see some of the stuff, like meteoric clay, doesn't have a multiplier. That in the future is going to change, but for right now, it's sort of like a testing material for me because no multipliers is just a good staple for me to test certain recipes with. But another couple things to note. Obviously, this is not the exact blacksmithing experience because this recipe is incredibly simple. So clearly, if you are a blacksmith in the future, this will probably offend you because I'm certain that it'll be a very strenuous craft with a lot of stress involved. But if we just buy a couple levels of it in here and then we check this out down here, we'll be able to see that obviously the alloys, the gems, etc. are a lot more expensive than just 3 ore. I don't know if I mentioned last time, I think I did, but the stat lines for this are obviously grace and then the affinity as opposed to reserves and affinity, and then the staff is just affinity. It has no reserves or grace. I might be restating myself, but you know, it's never hurts, right? Anyway, I think that's everything for this particular part of the showcase. After this, I'm going to be, if I have a mock-up map, showing that off, and then I'm also going to be going over some of the other stuff. I don't know if you caught it, but in the mastery tree we have some rearrangements there to go over, so it depends what we can get through. I still have to show off potion effects. I don't know if that's going to be today, it might be on Monday, but whatever the case, we are making progress, that's for goddamn sure, and I just got some word back from the person animating the base, and it looks pretty good. I'm really happy with it. There was a bit of a snag, but it is coming along. So, you know, hold out faith for that. I'm praying myself, and I think that it'll turn out pretty good. So we'll see. Whatever the case, I hope you guys enjoyed today's showcase. There are the rest of it. I guess today, or this specific clip has taken up about half of it. Regardless of that fact, though, I think we had a pretty good time, and I'm hopeful that you guys respect crafting and what it is. I'm pretty proud of this system. Regardless, I'm going to leave it to my future self, who will come on in just a few seconds. Enjoy. Okay, so we are going to be taking a look at a couple different things. I know I promised that I'd be making up a little mock-up town kind of thing, and I tried to at first, but I realized we are still lacking a couple props to make that look really good, as well as a couple variations of tiles. So instead, today we're just going to be on top of a fort that I'll show you in a second. It's just something I threw together that I think looks pretty cool. I'm not really a mapper myself. I helped map like spires and some other stuff. Obviously my own stuff for Verdict, even though we haven't really done that much. And generally speaking, I'm just not a super huge fan of it. It's not really my thing, but you know, I tried to make it look cool regardless, so whatever the case, I hope you guys enjoy that. First, though, we're going to be talking about some other stuff, namely some injury changes and some medical stuff, as well as the actual masteries themselves being repositioned. So originally, one of the things I did was put medical. So you can see these two branches of the medical trees. They were initially branching off of alchemy and lapidary up here. So what I've done is obviously moved them off of the crafting tree. The reason for that being, I'm kind of anticipating crafting, as I put more and more effort into it, being one of the best things in the game. And that's not an exaggeration. I really do expect it to be a sort of overbearing figure in quite a bit of conflict, or really any sort of investment into a character. It'll probably involve crafting to some extent, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but naturally you want to kind of spread that out a little bit. You know, for instance, espionage is a little lacking right now in terms of why you might want to go for it. So I'm going to be looking into that and making it better. But more importantly, for the moment, for all of the medical trees, we've revamped the entire injury system that we haven't really implemented yet, but or I haven't implemented yet. But previously, the one I made before was very outdated. It was one of the first systems I devised, so that's been rethought out so that it's no longer these tiers and injury lists and so on and so forth. And now it depends on the part of the body that you're injuring, along with a couple other things to specify what kind of damage is done and to take away responsibility from the victim and to give less kind of control to the person injuring the person. So, you know, except for EMs or whatever. Anyway, that's a long-winded way to say that medical's moved off of crafting, and we sort of have 4 sections, I guess you could say, of this tree, of the mastery tree, and I'm going to be looking into kind of solidifying that and expanding harvesting down here, solidifying masteries for medical, obviously expanding the purposes of scouting and espionage, etc., etc. Now, that's that. You can see the fort I've made here. Currently, these torches aren't lit up. Again, torches are a little bit broken right now, but you can see I'm kind of a fan of it. I really like the style of the castle, and more particularly the style of the tile sets, because I really do love the artist that did them, and especially the objects and everything. Really, I'm just a huge fan of all of his work. So the fact that I'm standing in the middle of like 7 different orders I've made is pretty cool. I'm pretty happy about that, and I hope you guys enjoy the look of it too. Next time, I will do my best to get something similar to this, sprited, or not, sorry, not sprited, but mapped and put in, specifically by me. So ideally, we'll have another version of a fort, or maybe we can connect this and make sort of a castle, or have an interior here, or whatever else. I'll think of something to make it more interesting. But for right now, we're just going to be talking about crafting and elaborating a little bit on crafting, particularly because I wanted to think about crafting as a sort of... I wanted to think of a reason for focus to exist, to be entirely honest with you guys. A while ago, I made focus, and it has been the centerpiece of this HUD down here, and I wanted some sort of fatigue mechanic, right? Because I wanted people to be discouraged from just spitting out as many things as they possibly could. I also wanted to reward people who didn't do that, right? Who didn't mass produce things. So the solution I've come up with, and you can see this if I level up quite a bit, I've fixed focus. You can see it regenerates slowly, or you will see. I believe right now it regenerates at a flat rate of 10 per second, and you get 100 per level. So right now I'm sitting at 4,500 focus total, and I'm currently at about half that. So if you guys remember from the previous clip, I mentioned that these stats here, when you make this weapon, if you're at full focus, won't be the stats shown in the baseline, right? The reason for that being, those stats up there, these baseline stats, are added to or subtracted from depending on how high your focus is. So if your focus is at 0, you're going to get a significant downside to whatever you're making. So you'll still be able to produce weapons, you just won't produce nearly as high quality weapons. And in addition to that, if you are at high focus or max focus, perhaps, you'll get a slight bonus. So if you save your focus and if you're patient with it and you don't spam things, then you'll get higher quality weapons than anyone else can manage. In addition to this, I can't really show this mechanically yet. Oh, that is a broken thing right there. I apologize. This is an issue with full screen, I think. If I can quickly go here and turn this on, you'll notice some weird crap happening. Don't worry too much about that. There we go. Should be fixed. Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, what you'll notice here is that when I'm mousing over, or rather selecting these here, you'll notice the little description at the end, right? It says that your potency and duration modifier increased. Here it says you have a 20% chance on creation for a weapon to be forged with 10% more of a random stat And you have the same thing up here for lapidary, so you can see that even the second tier one has a 1% bonus. So the second tier mastery and above have this little extra bonus to some facet of their craft. And this might just look like a random thing that's written down somewhere and doesn't exist, but the whole thing I did with focus down here, this stuff that all interacts with the stats of whatever you're producing, is fully implemented with this mechanic where you have plus 5% potency and duration on any potions you make if you have alchemy 2, the alchemy 2 mastery, whatever. That's the whole idea, and frankly I hope you guys enjoy, because I think that that's pretty cool that you can kind of modify that. And in the future I'd like to have maybe medical or whatever else increase your reserves percentages, right? And each of these masteries will have their own individual crafting bonuses. That way it's not all weighted on the right side of the tree over here with 3 crafts, but you also have maybe some bandages under medical or whatever else for harvesting, maybe like a shovel or something like that. So that's all just stuff to consider. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about it, and I think that the next clip, if it can be called a clip at all, is going to be the end of the video or the end of the showcase. So I hope you guys have a good day after that as well. Bye. Okay, so I think that wraps up everything pretty nicely. I know today was a little bit of a weird showcase. It's actually kind of similar to our old showcases where they were sort of informal and just off the cuff. That is the intention, of course. I wanted to have a relatively, informal sort of thing. But that's primarily just because I had a bunch of other stuff to do, and I wanted to show off the system as an entirety. I know that that's not necessarily entirely new stuff. Like, you've certainly seen crafting before, I'm certain. But you probably haven't seen, for a very long time, crafting all together as a system, coherently working together and, cohesively working like an oiled machine, sort of. And I'm really proud of that, so I wanted to show it off and see what you guys think. So I'm happy about that, and afterwards I sort of went into more technical detail about exactly what goes on behind the scenes there and what you can expect from going into the crafting masteries, or in the future going into any mastery in all, really. Either way, I think that was a pretty good sum up, and next time we're going to be talking more about specifically new stuff. Next showcase you can expect some potion effects. I've been working pretty hard on potions, so there's going to be quite a few of those, as well as some actual recipes that aren't just 3 ore in play. I have to tweak the alloys a little bit so that they still accept the stat multipliers, but other than that, it's no big deal. It'll be stuff that I'm pretty prepared to show off, so I hope you guys are excited for that. And more than anything, I hope you guys are excited for the base. I did get an animated base done, however, there was a bit of a hiccup. Unfortunately, they thought I meant a high-res version of the pixelated base, which basically means they scaled up the pixelated base and then animated it as if it was a normal image. So that was not their fault. That was my fault. That was a miscommunication. So I'm getting that fixed. It'll be solved sometime soon. I apologize again. I didn't really intend for that to happen. It wasn't, obviously not something I wanted for, the game, I guess, or I guess specifically that artist to do. And once more, I really do think that it's just something I have to really drive home and be really specific about. So hopefully next time I'll have some better news about that. Over the weekend, it's likely they'll get that stuff done. So as soon as that happens, I'll let you guys know and keep you updated on that whole situation. I think that's everything for today. All of the stuff I wanted to talk about for a sum up, kind of summarizing showcase that wasn't too new, too special or flashy. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.